Welcome to the Dare to Multiply podcast. On this podcast, we help passionate Jesus followers become courageous, obedient disciples who impact their communities for the kingdom of God. I'm your host, Cynthia Anderson, a disciple multiplication coach and trainer.
And I'm Jenn Chang, a disciple maker and coach based here in Thailand. We have some amazing topics and guests coming up, great people who are taking risks to launch new discipleship movements in their areas. We're excited to learn from them and introduce you to their ministries.
So if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any great tools or content coming your way. And I also want to mention we've just introduced a new community and exclusive access channels for those who want to explore further or dive deeper into our disciple-making content. Check that out at multipliersmindset.com/DTM membership.
How do we prioritize between marriage, family, and multiplication ministry? We have a clear vision to multiply, but what if it starts to take from our marriages? Or the other way around? And how does it all work together anyway? We are starting a new topic on husbands and wives discipling and leading together. We've seen how this one can get confusing, and couples in multiplication ministry might feel tension between the ministry work, responsibilities for marriage and family, and even theological stances. But the good news is that we believe that marriage and multiplication ministry don't have to be at odds, but can actually support one another. So in this series, we're going to bring on our husbands to talk about why discipling as a couple is important, address some of the barriers we've seen, and talk about some practical tips. Stephen and I are kicking us off today, and we'll be back right after these messages.
Are you busy but not seeing the fruit you long for? Dissatisfied with your present level of impact on those around you? Or frustrated with traditional methods of discipleship that don't seem to be effective? If so, the Getting Started in Disciple Making Movements course may be just what you need. Inside the Getting Started program, you'll get access to a step-by-step proven approach to making and multiplying disciples. Not only will you receive 25 short and practical video teachings spread out over 6 modules, but you'll have a chance to connect with others for group coaching via our monthly Zoom calls. And even more importantly, you'll become part of a global community of like-minded people from all over the world who are passionately committed to following Jesus and impacting others around them. If you want to get unstuck and begin moving forward as a disciple who makes disciples, I encourage you to go to courses.dmmsfrontiermissions.com and sign up for this powerful program today. And now to today's episode.
All right, so I am very excited today for today's episode. I am joined by my husband. This is Stephen, and we're going to share a little bit about our story and why we think that husbands and wives discipling and leading together can actually be a really good thing, really valuable thing. So I thought it'd be helpful if we started with our own story, just to give you a picture of where we're coming from. So how did we learn how to multiply disciples and even to lead together?
Yeah, so Jen and I actually went to the same elementary, middle, high school, and college. Famously, we went to the same piano teacher. And when our piano teacher asked you if you wanted me as a duet partner, you said?
I was 6 years old, and I said, Miss McNichol, I would rather die.
Yep. So
not a great start.
No, it's not good. This is before really knowing Jesus. So, but we started to become friends in college, and then we went on our first short-term trip to Thailand together. And so that's where God really opened our eyes to the unreached. And then after that trip, we started dating. But throughout that process in college, we kind of discerned our calling to go. And we were forming a team, getting ready to be married and then launch overseas. But we got, just from a variety of factors, we got married just 6 months before we launched to Thailand, which is not recommended. More time for that transition is a good idea.
We did. We figured it out.
Through pain.
Yeah.
But we just didn't have the time in that season to figure out what would working together, leading together look like. And so when we first arrived in Thailand, we were 6 months married. We were dealing with transitions in marriage, in transitioning to the field, and in team leadership.
Yeah, so I think when I when we were dating and thinking about getting married, thinking about going overseas together, I just remember having a lot of tension about what my role would be in the ministry and in marriage. I didn't really have any models of examples of what husbands and wives working together in a ministry context looked like. I think the only kind of model that I'd ever received was, husband and wife. The husband leads out in the work and in the ministry, and the wife is at home. And that's great. I think that's awesome. But I knew that we were both individually called into the work. And so I wanted to have a part. I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't want to just, what I feared was get absorbed into what Stephen was trying to do. But I remember I was praying about marriage, and I was praying about whether or not to move forward with life with Stephen. And I felt like the Holy Spirit was convicting me of how big a vision God had given us, how big a vision for Thailand that God had given Stephen. And it was almost like right from that Genesis passage where I knew that by himself, he just didn't have the ability to do it, and he needed a lot of help. And I felt like I could be the right person to help him. And so really stepped into marriage with a lot of fear and trembling, stepped into ministry and leading a team, but didn't really know what that would look like or how it would work between us.
So we did have like that vision piece like figured out, and it took a while before we launched, but that was solid. But all the other details of how to work together, we hadn't figured any of that out. Mm-hmm. And so right when we got here, Thailand felt really overwhelming, and I really needed help because we had 13 people on our team, and just leading all that stuff, visas, language, ministry. I had kind of assumed Jenn would take leadership with me over the team, especially with the gals on our team. Because I'd seen her do it before in college and in ministry as we were making disciples when we were back in the States. But because of all the stressors, we were fighting like basically every day our first year on the field. And over time, I realized that at least some of the tensions, some of it was just purely just marriage, but some of the tensions coming from Jenn were about her not having clarity in her role in ministry and in the team.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was I knew how to lead when I was single, but when we were married, now there are all these dynamics of, is Stephen the head of the household? If he's the head of the household, does that mean that he's the head of the ministry? And what can I say? And what can I do? And can I lead? So we just had I had a lot of confusion there and didn't verbalize it, didn't figure it out until, it came out in fights.
Yeah, a lot of fights. But eventually, this is probably like 6 to 9 months into Thailand, we kind of started to realize like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. She didn't know how much I was dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I was starting to realize she's frustrated about her lack of clarity in her role and leadership. And so we started talking about it finally and communicating. And we were asking other people, like, how does this work? We started listening to like sermons and studying the word about theologically, where do we stand, like about that. You did a lot of your own soul searching.
I did.
Yeah.
A lot of angst.
So we started to figure out like, hey, let's try this together because I really need help. You want to have a role. And so we started debriefing more, like just making decisions together. So for example, a big part of our early season was helping to lead our team in language learning, but also disciple making rhythms. And I would just ask Jenn for feedback a lot because I had a hard time knowing how everyone was responding to the things I was saying. So before the meeting, I would ask Jenn, what do you think about this? What does the team need? And then during the meeting, I'm focused on kind of giving the topic. And so Jenn would pay more attention to how people are responding. And then afterwards we debrief. Jenn would also go to meet the gals on our team one-on-one and get an idea of how they were responding to what I would say and to just address some of their concerns more personally too, because, it would be hard for me to address each individual person in a big group. And so that's how we started working together. It wasn't that we had to do the exact same things, but that we each had a role in it.
Yeah. And I think even Stephen asking me for my opinion and for help with planning and him processing his ideas with me, all of that actually was him inviting me to be more bold with my voice and him welcoming and creating opportunity for me to feel safe to actually input and share. And so from those initial steps of working together, processing together, Stephen actually started to really clear the way for me to lead or to be in ministry meetings and ministry settings. And probably around the end of the first
about a
year and a half, I felt really much like the same kind of commitment to leadership and to ministry. And it was starting to be recognized by our team, our org, our church. And so it took a lot of work. It took a lot of just step by step. What does it look like to communicate? What happens if we're about to fight right before a team meeting? It came down to figuring out what our specific lanes are, what are our giftings. And so maybe not so much I had to do everything the same way Stephen did. He's gifted in so many ways that I'm not. He's very future oriented. He's very strategic. I tried for a while to just be just like him. And then I realized I'm not very good at that. I'm good at being me, much more relational, much more present with people. And so we did a lot of dividing and conquering, where a lot of times Stephen will come in with strategic initiatives and I'll come in and maybe build consensus, or I'll talk to people, or I'll debrief people. I remember one of our first ministry kind of assignments, we were working with a church in Thailand, and they asked us to work with their young adult college program. And so there were all these different campuses, and Stephen took one campus and I took another.
Yeah, because the campus you went to was like 8 out of 10 gals.
Oh, it was all girls.
And then the key leader at the campus I went to was a guy. So it made more sense for us to divide and conquer that way.
Yeah. So we would go to different groups to train or to, lead DBGs or whatever. And then we'd come back home so tired at night, and we would debrief and talk about it and talk about what we learned together.
Help each other. Yeah.
And help each other out.
You came with me a lot, and sometimes I came with you.
That's true.
To your campus.
Yeah. But that was just some examples of ways that we were able to work together, even if we weren't doing the same thing. We were always on the same page, committed to the same thing. And I think this is a really sweet one, actually. After our first term, we did a debrief, and one of the questions on the debrief are, what are you most thankful for from your last term, 2.5, 3 years? And both of us did this individually. And when we talked about our answers together, we had both said that, apart from learning union with Christ, just deeper abiding on the field, the other thing that we were most grateful to God for was for our marriage. And sorry, I get a little emotional. Our marriage and getting to work together. And that was just a really big win for us, considering where we came from.
Yeah. So it took a lot of work, but it was really grace from God to bring us from fighting every day our first year on the field to being, this is one of the biggest wins from our first term. So yeah, we're thankful for that.
Yeah. So we're passionate about the topic. Yeah. So we talked about it. We thought about it. Why is this topic of men and women, or husbands and wives? Why is this topic important, of men and women, husbands, wives working together? So based on our own experiences and interactions with other married couples, there's a few reasons why we think it's important for couples in disciple making to consider working together. Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
Yeah. So if you're pursuing disciple making, it's really important. We think that the husband and the wife have this shared vision and shared level of commitment to multiplying disciples, regardless of role. Even if one spouse is primarily taking care of the home or the family, the commitment to the vision needs to be just as strong as the other spouse, because there's a lot of sacrifice involved with making disciples. And in order to pursue that vision, you're going to be hosting people in your home. You're going to be going out to meet people in random times, potentially travel. That's a big part of what we do here in Thailand, traveling to meet disciple makers around the country. And so if we weren't on the same page in vision and commitment, there would be a lot of tension between us. And we've seen that kind of play out in different couples. And so the reason it's important for married couples pursuing disciple making to be on the same page with their vision and commitment. Kind of like a sub point to that, this ministry, Multiplying Disciples, is really just all encompassing in a lot of ways. So it's not the same as like a normal 9-to-5 job. You go to the office, you come home, and you just forget about it. Disciple making, like I said, you have people in your home, you travel, it kind of consumes your schedule if you're trying to do this right. And so it's important from a practical standpoint, not just a vision standpoint, that you're on the same page with your spouse about what you're going to be doing. And so it potentially being on the same page could be working together or supporting each other in that ministry. So one example is, obviously there were times that we would divide and conquer. Like I would go to one campus and Jenn would go to a different one. And there's other times when one of us is primarily playing a support role. So Jenn was having a discovery Bible study with these two Thai gals who were in university, and it was really fruitful. And sometimes they would come over to our apartment. And during that time, I knew it was my role to support her. And I would like cook food for them. They made like weird requests. One time they're like, "Can you make hush puppies?" I was like, "I've never done that before,
how
but
do you know what a hush
I
puppy
can try."
is?
Yeah. And so I would cook food and focus on hosting and prepping the apartment so that Jenn can focus on engaging with the gals and leading the Bible study and do discovery with them. And praise the Lord, they both came to faith and we got to baptize them. You got to baptize them in the pool in our condo. So that was really fun.
You cooked all the meals for the party after after the baptism. But it was really fun because every time these gals came over and we read the Bible together, something else that I didn't realize they were seeing our dynamic in marriage. And so Stephen would leave the room and they would say, "Oh my gosh, you have such a wonderful husband. He's so serving." And so even just getting to set an example with our lives was really something that impacted these gals.
So disciple-making ministry is really all-encompassing. So it's important that couples are on the same page about how to support each other and how that might affect their rhythms. And then the last thing I think is it just makes sense because when you get married, you become one flesh. You're the same team in life, right? You're committed to be companions in life. So one half step from that is really being on the same team in ministry. And it's totally possible. We've seen many couples do this where they have completely different ministries and they just are still supportive of each other. But it's just worth figuring out if you want to pursue multiplying disciples together, it can be really fun and it can really multiply your impact too when the two of you guys are on the same page, pursuing the same vision. And so being the same team in life, but also being the same team in ministry. There's a lot of work to do to figure out how that works. Right. And there's a lot of communication and sometimes conflict, but it can be really, really sweet.
Yeah. Oh,
there's some other things too.
That makes me happy.
There's some other things too that I think we've seen in working together and seeing others couples work together that has been great.
Yeah. So some other reasons why it's important for couples to work together is we've seen how when you're a team together, you actually maybe can increase access. You have increased access in your ministry. So we see this a lot overseas where maybe men can't really talk to women or women can't really talk to men. You have to stay within genders. So if you're working together as a husband and wife, then that gives you access to families, gives you access to other women, and you can just have more interaction with different groups and demographics of people. And something else that we found really sweet is that when you have two people working together on a team, then you get to take advantage of both sets of giftings and both sets of strengths. So again, like Stephen's good at things that I'm not, thank God, and I'm pretty good at things that he's not. And we bring both those things to the table instead of having to work out of our weaknesses or things that we don't like to do very much. I'm incredibly non-detail oriented, and Stephen sees all the details, and so sometimes it's a clash, but a lot of times he'll even this podcast, he helped look over the script and put time markers in, whereas I would just wing it sometimes. But a way that we've seen both of our gifts come to bear has been in the ways that we've worked with our national partner. Her name is Mint. Our actually most fruitful partner in Thailand happens to be a single woman who, if it was Stephen alone, he probably wouldn't have had. It would be awkward.
There was one time we had two different ministry opportunities, and I was like, "Hey, Mint, is it okay if Jenn goes to visit this other partner and I just come by myself to the training that you're doing?" She's like, "Can we not? Can we have both of you come?" She's just used to working with us together, right, which is really sweet. And we were like, "Yeah, that's fine. We'll try to reschedule something." But yeah, it made a lot of sense for us to work with her together.
And based off of our different giftings too, Stephen, she's used to talking to Stephen on a more strategic standpoint. So he'll check in on her about her objectives and her goals, and he'll do some he'll do more coaching and teaching, but I come in as just another girlfriend. I'll dig a little bit more into her personal life, into how her abiding is going, and so she's used to interacting with us in our lanes of strength.
Yeah.
You think I should say the one about?
Yes.
Yeah. So we were actually, this is a sweet story. It's bittersweet. We were talking about, we have multiple Thai partners, and one of them was another woman who we had done ministry with, but she ended up just really burning out, pulling out of the ministry, kind of cut all connection with all of us. It was a really hard experience. And she was actually good friends with Mint, and we asked Mint why did that happen, or why did she burn out so hard?
Is there anything that we could have done to
Right.
maybe avoid that?
Right. And Mint was really straightforward, and she said, this other gal, this partner, she basically said she didn't have a Stephen and Jenn. She didn't have someone she didn't have like coaches who could come in and talk on a more personal level.
Pretty much all of her main connections were men. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard for her to bring up things that were going on in her life or that were emotionally hard. Mm-hmm. And so with Jenn there with Mint, they could definitely talk about some deeper things. And a lot of times it was just the three of us together, but mm-hmm. Jenn just felt more comfortable to engage Mint on some of those heart issues. And sometimes I would just leave, like just to let them talk about stuff. But I do think, disciple making is about people, and to be able to talk heart to heart more often than not, probably most times, men to men, women to women, there's just an ability to connect more deeply. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens between Jenn and Mint. And I really just don't think that we would have the partnership that we have with her, and be able to see the things that we've seen God do through her and her disciples without us working together.
Yeah. And so I think there is something about finding good synergy with your spouse actually allows your ministry even to have more impact and more fruitfulness, right, and even more effectiveness when you have both gifts to bear and both strengths.
Yeah. And then this is underrated. I mean, it's a generalization, but you taught me how to communicate emotionally, but emotions rather, or like have more emotional intelligence. But it's again, ministry is people. And I really do think women bring more emotional capacity, more emotional intelligence, more emotional maturity. And when you're disciple making, there's a lot of churn, the heart is coming out with all these things. Mm-hmm. And so when there's women that are part of it on your team, or especially with spouses working together, we can really access that part of the emotional communication and intelligence, because Jenn's in the room. That is a big part of what we can engage with. So I think that's a strength that comes from husbands and wives working together.
You also can give each other feedback that other people can't.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you taught me how to speak up for myself.
I mean, that's part of being on the same team, right? It's because you're so close together, there's certain things that we can talk to each other about that, we wouldn't be able to say to other teammates or other people. It takes a lot of trust and safety and learning each other's communication and taking it the right way in order for it to happen. But once you get to that place, it really can be good. Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah,
I can't hide anything from Stephen anyway. And kind of a last point about why we think couples, husbands and wives working together is important, is there is a dynamic of the potential of leading together. We definitely think that if couples can be called to a ministry to work together, they can also be called to a leadership role together. A caveat that we will say is that how would you word this?
If one of the spouses is not actually gifted and called to leadership, don't try to lead together. Like, don't just elevate the other person to leadership. It worked out with us because, originally I was the team leader for Thailand. Jenn legitimately has leadership calling and gifting, but it was just a process of clarifying that and
stepping into it
and having her step into it practically. But we've also seen some examples, and it comes out of a good place that spouses want to work together, but where one spouse is in a leadership position and the other one is not, and they elevate the other spouse to co-leadership, and they are not qualified to lead. And so it gets really confusing because it's like
It creates a lot of pressure on the spouse who doesn't want to be a leader.
The people that you're leading are like, is this you saying this, or is this your spouse saying this? Do I have to listen to you because that person is technically my leader? And so that's one caveat that we'll give, is leading together can be really sweet. Obviously, it worked for us in Thailand. You could be leading a disciple-making team, an overseas missions team, or just even like a house church together as you get to multiplying disciples. But if the spouse isn't called to leadership, there's different ways to work together that isn't like technically a leadership role. And so just maybe our word of caution with that is just be careful.
But if you both do have that leadership call, gifting, then pursue it.
Yeah.
It's actually a really sweet thing, because leadership can be a lonely space.
Right.
So to be a team in that space is a really valuable and effective thing for ministry and life as well.
Right. There's some strength in plurality, like in that we got to lead together. And so, like I said earlier, Jenn would meet with the gals on our team and individually speak with her own authority, but also from a united front, if that makes sense. And so I didn't have to convince her. We made decisions together, and we could work with our whole team in leading them towards what we felt God was directing us towards. So there's a lot of wins in husbands and wives getting to not only make disciples together, but step into leadership roles together, if it makes sense.
The only word of caution is make sure you're both called, make sure you're both gifted in leadership, and then also just build a lot of clarity within each other about how you lead together, and then also in the people that you lead, whether it's national partners, or if you're leading a team, or if it's the people in your church. Sometimes I would talk to the gals on our team and they would say, is this you speaking? Is this Steven speaking? And I had to figure out, do I have authority on my own? Because that's something that's implicit with leadership, is the authority to make decisions, the authority to set a path or set a vision. And so, so those are some of the reasons, just that it's important for husbands and wives to figure out working together, because you should have a shared vision and commitment, because of the nature of disciple making ministry being all encompassing, the nature of being on the same team in both life and ministry. Pragmatically, you get more effectiveness in ministry because your access to different groups of people increases, and you can take advantage of more giftings and even take advantage of leading together out of your giftings and out of your strengths together. So I guess out of all these reasons, all the reasons we think it's important, what's something that we've actually seen in our own lives? What's something that we've seen come out of our shared leadership, our shared ministry, and working together?
Yeah, for sure. I think part of the reason why it was so challenging for us to figure out how this dynamic would work in leading and working together in disciple making was, you had mentioned at the beginning, you hadn't seen a lot of models. Just the church that we were part of and the ministries we had been a part of, a lot of times the wife was focused on disciple making in the home, and it was primarily the husband that was taking the lead in some other external things, which is totally great and fine. Like, that is appropriate and right for a lot of married couples. But you had not seen a lot of those examples, because you did feel individually called to step into the ministry here in Thailand, and you had been living disciple-making patterns when you were in the States. And so that's why it took us so long to figure that out. But one of the really fruitful and awesome things we've seen out of us working together is we did not set out to be this at all. It just kind of happened this way.
We're just trying to survive.
But it showed other married couples that it's possible. And it was surprising to us. It actually came out of, we were speaking at a conference for people planning to go overseas. And we were sharing about a topic really important to us, which was union with Christ, that we had learned together. So we just wanted to reflect that we had learned together by sharing from the stage together. And at the end, Jenn had a line of 10 people talking to her, and I had like one guy, which is great. But, the refrain from a lot of those women was, I would never have been bold enough to come up here and ask my question if I hadn't seen a woman on the stage. And also from that, we had so many couples talk to us like, how does this dynamic work? Because it feels like you guys are a team together and we really both feel called to the ministry of disciple making. How do we work together? And again, we didn't intend for this to happen at all, but we ended up just talking to a lot of couples about, hey, this can work. And so that's one of the things, just even on our own team, is a lot of the married couples work together, and a lot of the women have the exact same job description as the men on our team. And the women do the same stuff, and they go out and train disciple makers, go into the harvest, they share, they do everything the guys do. Largely because Jenn stepped up in leadership to be an example for them, but also because she specifically empowered them towards that and called their giftings out and invited them into it. And so one of the results of all the women in our team being just as much a part of the ministry as the guys is we have multiple Thai partners, Thai believers that we work with to train and come alongside in disciple making here in Thailand. And probably the three most fruitful partners, we probably have like 8 partners across our 3 teams in Thailand. The 3 most fruitful partners are all women, and they are coached by women. And there's something there that indirectly, or at least partially, because Jenn and the 2 of us were willing to work through the difficult things of figuring this out, the women on our team stepped in with boldness, and it resulted in more women disciple makers here in Thailand. And so that is something that we praise God for. Maybe the other thing I'll say, in terms, that's kind of like the external disciple making fruit. But one of the other things that we really saw was how the Lord changed us. And this is a common thing that disciple makers say is, you're trying to focus on the work of disciple making. You think you're working for the Lord, and ultimately he's calling you to disciple making ministry because he wants to change you and who you are and make you look more like Christ. And we ended up expanding our original team of 13 into 3 teams across different cities in Thailand back in 2020. And we had one final celebration about what God did for our original team. And we had a little exercise where we said, hey, write 3 words about yourself when this team started, and 3 words about this team when this team started. And then write 3 words about yourself now, and 3 words about the team now. And it was just so apparent that God had brought this kind of fractured, selfish group of individuals together to be a family that was pursuing a vision together. But also what was also shocking was all of the development, all the growth that particularly, no offense to the guys on our team, but particularly the women on our team saw. We had people overcoming issues of anger and forgiveness and insecurity and major sin issues and different things like that, because Jenn had invested in them. And Jenn is a crusher at developing other people, especially women. And she even, like, a lot of times would help them set their development plan. Like, if you want to grow on this topic, I'll read this book with you. So you got a lot of development out of that. I did. But I was just in awe, because I kind of knew along the way, but just to see the change over a few years of how these women grew more into Christ because of Jenn's investment into them. That's something that there's no way I could have done that. And it's kind of evident even how the guys definitely grew, but
you did so much with
not
them.
Nearly as intentionally as Jenn did. And so those are some of the things that we've seen, just from getting to work together, and both of us working as a team together. The women on our team empowered, developed, and seeing fruit with other women in disciple making here in the country.
I'm very stunned by just how many props you've given me.
It's just true, though.
I think, it is a passion that we have, is to see everyone raised up as disciple makers, not just men, not just leaders, but men and women, families, couples, everyone can make disciples in really powerful and fruitful ways. And I'll say that for all the props that Stephen gave me, I couldn't have done that if he hadn't cleared the path for me, trusted me, called out my giftings. In our story, I was the one who pulled back. I was nervous and I was insecure about actually working with Stephen, and he was the one who kept telling me, you can do this, you belong in the room, I believe in you, I trust you. And all of that affirmation and all of the ways that he set me up and spoke well of me helped me actually have the confidence to help him lead the team and to work together in the ministry together. I don't think I could have done it if you hadn't seen that in me and called it out. Something else we've seen come out from our working together as husband and wife is that we've just seen how not only does ministry flow out from who we are and who God creates us to, and from who God creates us to be, it also flows out of our marriage.
Yeah.
We in our marriage are one flesh, and there's something really powerful when we can witness to a very unreached, very broken world what it looks like to have a marriage of unity, where we love each other, where we trust each other, where we're able to partner and work together towards a ministry God's called us both to. I think, again, especially in Thailand, where we're working with these first generation believers, new believers who've never seen what it looks like to have a Christian family or to raise kids in a Christian home, to be able to see a Christian marriage generally be a good example. But I think out of even our relationship, we're able to witness from this dynamic. And even there is a lot of joy. I'm not saying that you can't experience the same joy as a single person, but there is something uniquely joyful about getting to work and partner with your best friend. There's a really rewarding feeling of going after the same goal together and getting to be a part of it together and being hand in hand that we've come to really appreciate and expect even in our life of ministry. So yeah, it's a privilege.
Didn't even practice that.
It's a privilege to work together. Anything else for that?
No.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode, and I'll be back in a minute with some takeaways.
Are you ready to unlock your potential as a disciple maker? Then it is time to dive deeper into the principles that are changing lives with the Multipliers Mindset course. This transformative course accompanies the book, The Multipliers Mindset, Thinking Differently About Discipleship by Cynthia Anderson. These lessons will help you not just through reading about a multiplying movement, but how to actively live out a lifestyle that leads towards movements. And here's the best part. It comes with a practical workbook, which is designed to take your learning even further. This workbook guides you step by step to apply what you learn and to impact the lives of lost people around you. With easy-to-follow steps, uplifting lessons, and timeless truths from the book, this course equips you to make disciples and to start groups that multiply. Visit multipliersmindset.com to step further into the work God is calling you to do. Let's multiply together.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode. I hope you all enjoyed meeting Stephen. I was really excited and happy to have him on. So some takeaways from that episode about why it's important for couples to work and lead together in disciple-making ministry. Stephen talked about how it's important for husband and wife to have a shared vision and commitment to multiplying disciples because it's an all-encompassing job. It's not a normal 9-to-5, but you're going to have disciples in your home. You're going to be traveling. You're going to be visiting people. People are going to be coming over. And so with it being so all-encompassing and with sacrifices being made in order to persevere in the vision, both husband and wife need to be on the same page. He talked about how we can play roles. We can divide and conquer in our roles, where maybe a husband does one type of ministry and a wife does another different type of ministry, and you can come back and talk about it, or you can actually support one another in disciple making. So an example that he mentioned was me leading a Discovery Bible study with some Thai gals, and him cooking and hosting and focusing on making the environment really hospitable for those gals. And it led into them getting to view our marriage, view what a godly marriage looked like. We also talked about how when you're married, you are one flesh, you're on the same team for life, and you could also be in the same team in ministry. So it just makes sense to consider as husband and wife if you have the same calling and the same commitment to multiplying disciples. We also talked about how working with your husband or working with your wife allows you to increase your access to different people in ministry. If both husband and wife are involved, it means you probably have access to men and women or families, and you have more opportunity to share the gospel or to make disciples. And also having a team, a husband-wife team, allows you to take advantage of both sets of giftings, perspectives, and strengths. So we talked about how when Stephen and I work with our national partner, who's a single woman, I'm able to meet her more relationally, more personally, and Stephen is able to work in his gifting and his strength of being more strategic, being more helping keep our partner accountable to her objectives. And lastly, we talked about how not only can husbands and wives work together in multiplication ministry, but they can also lead together. And the only caveat we gave is that if you feel called to lead together, make sure that both husband and wife have the same commitment to leadership, and also maybe even a gifting for leadership, because elevating one spouse who doesn't really actually want to be a leader can be really difficult, can be a lot of pressure. But if you can lead together, that's just a great opportunity to continue to multiply your impact. And finally, we just talked about some of the benefits of what comes out of husbands and wives working and leading together. And Stephen got to talk about how more women can be empowered, how all people can be empowered to make disciples, not just men. And then also about how your unity as a family, as a married couple, can overflow into your ministry as a witness for those who don't often see that dynamic. And it also increases your efficacy and impact as you both use your gifts. And just that, at the end of the day, it's a really wonderful joy if you can figure it out to work with your spouse. It's really rewarding to go after the same thing together and to see how God answers. And so if this is something that you desire, if this is something that you're hopeful for or working towards with your spouse, then our encouragement for you is to try it, is to talk about it, is to have that first conversation with each other about what working together could look like and why you desire it. I think if I could give you an application step, it would be, if you're married, for you to have those conversations together and get on the same page about what you desire in your ministry together.
That's all we've got for this episode of Dare to Multiply. One thing that would really help both us and other people who might like to listen in is for you to rate and review the podcast, if you haven't done that yet, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'd also love to connect with you on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Feel free to message me with any topics, questions you'd like addressed, or guests you'd like me to interview. Until next week, then, please remember, no matter how ordinary you feel, God's dreams for us are always bigger than we can imagine. Let's dare to trust Him for a greater harvest.